everyone, you're welcome back to Ying Swiss Ladies Place once again. My name is Yinka. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing us how to make 6 pieces cut. And here are the measurements we're going to be using for this tutorial. And to determine the amount of fabric required, you will multiply your hip measurements by 2.5. And if you want more fullness, you multiply it by 3. If you are using Ankara fabric from hip 40 upward, you can just cut out 3 yards. Let's get started. Alright, so I've cut out my 3 yards here. And the first thing you do is to fold the 3 yards into 2. You can see the fabric is already folded into 2. After that, you fold it over again into 4. Just like I'm showing you here. And then you will leave 1 inch at the edge for your zip allowance. You can see this place is open, that's the center back. And here is the center front, it's on fold. And that is the 1 inch for your zip allowance. After that, I iron it flat. And I already cut out my lining in the same way. You can see, first fold it into 2. Then you fold it over into 4. Just the way you folded the Ankara fabric. And you make sure the folded edge on the lining piece align properly with the folded edge on the Ankara fabric. Let them be on the same line. And again, the Ankara fabric is 2 inches longer than the lining because that is our hemming allowance. You can see it's 2 inches longer. Alright, so the next thing you want to do is to fold these 2 inches on top of the lining piece, just like I have done it there. Then you iron it. If your Ankara fabric is facing one direction, please kindly cut this out on your lining first. Then you use your lining to trace it on your Ankara fabric so that your pattern can align properly. So after that, you measure your skirt length plus ½ inch. My skirt length is 42 plus half is going to be 42.5. So I'll measure 42.5. Then you roll it, and after that, you trim out the excess. So starting from the beginning of the fabric at the upper parts like that, you measure down your hip line. My hip line is 8 inches plus half for allowance, that is 8.5. Then I'll measure the knee length. The knee length is 18 inches plus half, that is 18.5. I'll measure that and then I'll roll it. The next thing, starting from the upper part, and note all your measurements are going to start from the folded edge. So from at the upper part, I'm going to measure 3.5 inches. Then on the hip line, I'm going to measure 4 inches. Then whatever you measure on your waistline at the upper part, just measure it on the knee. So I measure 3.5, I'll measure that 3.5 on the knee. Then at the lower part, I'm going to measure 4 inches multiplied by 2.5. That will give me 10. So I measure 10 at the lower part. You remember I use 4 inches on the hip line. After that, I'll connect these points together. Then I'll cut it out. So basically, we've cut out our center panel in front and our center panel at the back. Alright, so I'm done cutting. The next thing is to notch your center front and also your zip allowance. Alright, so this is it. We have 2 pieces for the back, and then we have 1 piece for the front, and then we have the same thing on the lining piece as well. Alright, so the next thing you'll do now is to open your seam allowance down like I've done there. Then you iron it flat again. Then you move the lining piece to match with the edge, just like I'm showing you there. By the time you do this, that remaining 2 inches will be at the other side. Then you fold this right on top of the lining piece and then you iron it. So we've moved the seam allowance to the other side. Alright, so after that, you just pick one of the piece. I pick the lining piece for the center front. Then I keep the remaining ones aside. Alright, so this is the way the whole thing was when we cut it out. You can see the hip line, the knee and all that. Alright, so you turn it upside down, just like I'm showing you here. Turn it upside down, then you place it on top of this other side. Just like that. Alright. So I'm going to take this again for better understanding. Okay, it was like this. Just turn it upside down and then you place it on the remaining side like I've done there. Then after that, you just measure ½ inch. Just measure ½ inch and then you pin it with that ½ inch all the way down. Just pin it all the way down. Then after that, you trim off the excess. Basically, you are using that one to shape this side. Alright, so this is what we have. The next thing is for you now to open it. Just open it like that. Then you can just use your iron to press it down so that it can be flat. We're going to be taking our measurements now. This upper part is your waistline. Then from your waist, you measure down your hip line, which is 8.5. Your knee, which is 18.5. Then you rule all this line. Rule all these lines. Alright, starting from the folded edge, you measure your waist circumference divided by 4 plus 1 inch allowance. On the hip line, you measure hip divided by 4 plus 1 inch seam allowance. Then on the knee line, just place your exact hip measurement on the knee line. Just place your exact measurement on the knee line. If you really want it to be very tight on the knee, you can still reduce by 1, but that is not necessary. Using the curved part of your French cuff, you connect the hip to the waist. Then using the straight side, then you connect it to the knee length. Then from your knee length, you connect it straight to the corner on your hem line. Just connect it to that corner like so. And that's it, you can cut it out. Alright, so we are done cutting. You notch your hip line. You notch the knee. Alright, so you take off the pins now. You can see the way it is. Just take off the pin. This method is so fast and so quick and it's always beautiful. Alright, so this is the center front panel. Then we'll have 4 panels for the sides. So just pick two of them for the front, then you can see the way it is. You keep this aside. So I'm going to show you the back panel. So you have two for the center back. This is the center back. We have two pieces for it. Then you take out the remaining two sides for the back. Alright, so that is it. The same thing you have on the lining piece is also the same thing you have on your main fabric. And that's it. Alright, so I'm going to be showing you how to join it. You can see the three pieces for the front. You are going to be joining them together. You match your center front with one side, right side facing each other. Then you are going to be sewing it with 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way down. Alright, so when that is done, you take the other side and then you join it to the center front on the other side. Alright, so after joining the front, this is what you have. Alright, then you repeat the same thing on the lining piece for the front as well. Okay, so this is our back. This is the two center back, and that is our zip allowance there. Alright, so place the two pieces of the back together like that, right side facing each other. Then you can just use your zipper to measure down where your zipper will start from, or you can just measure 9 inches downward for your zip allowance like that. Then starting from that 9 inches, you sew with 1 inch allowance all the way down. If you remember, we added 1 inch for our zip allowance, so sew with that 1 inch all the way down to the hem of the panels. Alright, so after that you open it up. Then you take the sides. You know, we have two sides, so you join one to one side and you join the other to the other side. Alright, so place it on top of it, right side facing each other. Then you sew with 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way down. Then when you're done with one side, you join the other side panel to the other side of the center back like that. Right side facing each other. Alright, so the back pieces is ready. You've joined all the panels together, and that is our zip allowance there. The next thing now is to join the lining piece. Just join the lining the way you have joined the main fabric. So I'm done with the lining. The next thing now is to fix my zipper. And this is my zipper. Right side of my zipper is facing up, right side of my fabric is facing up. Then I'll turn the zipper downward like that. So I'll open it. Then I'm going to sew on the zip allowance. So I'm done with one side of the zipper. The next thing is I'll zip it up. That's it. Then I'll turn the fabric upside down. This time around, I'm going to be sewing from the lower part of the zipper. Alright, so my zipper is in. The next thing now is to use the lining to turn the main fabric. So the right side of the lining is facing the right side of the fabric. Then I'm going to open my zip. You can see you match the two together. Match your main fabric with your lining piece, right side facing each other. Align it properly. Then you sew from one side of the waist to the zip allowance, then you sew it all the way to the end of the zip allowance opening. Just like I'm showing you here. I believe you can see it. So when you get to the zip allowance opening on the lining piece, just sew ½ inch more than that point, then you backstitch and stop. You can see the way it is. If you bring it to the right side, this is what you have. You can see we are done with one side of this back. You can see we've used the lining to turn the zipper and also the waistline. We are making a bandless cut. Alright, so you do the same thing to the other side. You see, that's the way it is. Wrong side is facing each other, then this is the way it is. So just take your time and watch this video. I've shown us the step by step on how to do this, the easiest method. So right side facing each other now, you're going to sew the other side of the zipper with the lining. Then you are going to start sewing from the waist line, just like the way you did to the other side. So when you get to the zip allowance opening on the lining, you sew ½ inch further backstitch, then you stop. Alright, so when you bring it to the right side, this is what we have. You can see how we've used the lining to conceal the zipper. So now you're going to sew the lower part of the skirt. Right side facing each other, you join the lining with the fabric. That is the lower part of the skirt. Alright, so I'm done joining the lining with the fabric on the lower part. The next thing is to sew the side. You start sewing the side from the waistline. Start sewing from the waistline all the way down to the hem line. One side is done. Then you do the other side, starting on the waistline. When you're about to finish, you stop, leave a little space so that you can have a space to bring your skirt to the right side. You can just measure like 3 inches. Then you sew the remaining one close. So you're going to use that little space you left to bring the skirt to the right side. Alright, so I'm done sewing. This is how it's looking. So I'll just use that little opening to bring everything to the right side. Alright, so this is how it's looking from the right side. Inside, this is how it's looking. We've used the lining to turn the fabric and also the zip. Alright, so the next thing is to finish the front. This is my front. This is the front of my skirt. Right side is facing up. Then I'm going to match the lining on top of it. So the right side of the lining is facing the right side of the skirt. Then I will align it properly on the waistline like that. After that, I'll just fold it into two, just like I'm showing you. Then starting from the center front like that, I'll measure ½ inch downward. Then I'll use my French cuff to connect it to the side seam. Just connect it to the side seam like that. This is just for it to ease around the tummy area when we're done sewing our skirt, so that it's not going to be too snug on the waist. Alright, so you cut it out. After that, you open it. The right side of the lining is still facing the right side of the skirt. So I'll sew the waist area with ½ inch seam allowance. Then when I'm done sewing the waist area, I'll sew the hem line. Match the lining with the fabric. Match them together, right side facing each other, and then you sew the hem line. Alright, so I'm done sewing the hem line. The next thing is to join the sides. And please start joining the side from the waistline. It's very important. Alright, so you join the side all the way down. Then you join the other side. Make sure you're starting from the waistline. Then when you're about to finish, you stop at a point, leaving about 3 inches space where you're going to use to bring the skirt to the right side. Then you sew all the way down. The lining is pushing the main fabric upward. That's why you need to start from the waistline. You see the way it is on the lower part? The lining push up the main fabric. Alright. After that, you are going to notch the waist area. Just notch it. Then you bring it to the right side from that little opening. Alright, so this is how the front is looking. So the next thing now is for us to iron it, and then we'll close the side of our skirt. So I've ironed everything down. So this is my front. This is the front of my skirt. I lay it flat, right side facing up. Then I'll place the back on top of it. So right side of the back is facing the right side of the front. So after that, I'll pin the sides together. So after pinning, the next thing is to input your measurements. Starting from the waistline, you measure your hip line downward. Then you measure your knee. Then from your zipper side, starting from that center back, you measure quarter of your waist measurements. That is your waist divided by 4. On the hip line, you measure hip divided by 4. You know, we are doing one side now. Then on the knee, whatever you have on your hip line, you minus 1.5 from it, then you put it there. So now you do the same thing to the right. First, measure down the hip line, measure the knee. Then you measure quarter of your waist, starting from the zipper point. You measure. This is just to cross-check your measurements. On the hip, you measure quarter of the hip. Then on the knee, whatever you have on the hip, you minus 1.5 and then you put it there. And then you connect all these points together. Connect the other side as well. And then you just roll it downward like I'm showing you here. Alright, so that's it. You're going to be sewing it. And after that, our skirt is done. Alright, so just sew on that your short line. Just sew on top of that your short line all the way down. And that's it, our skirt is ready. You can see how beautiful the skirt is looking. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next tutorial. Bye.